Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Ruby Rogues podcast. This week on our panel, we have Valentino Stoll.
Hey now.
We also have Luke Stutters.
Hello.
I'm Charles Max Wood from Top End Devs, and we have a special guest this week. It's Amir Rajan. Amir, welcome back.
Happy to be back. It's been a while. I think it's been at least a few years now.
Yeah, you're going to make me go look it up, aren't you?
I'm going to make you go look it up.
Yeah, it's been a while, but what's new with you?
Let's see. We'll survive the apocalypse, so that's always a good thing. And I'm still doing game development, so that part hasn't changed. And of course, with DragonRuby, we just celebrated our 3-year anniversary of the product. So that would be the new thing. Everything else is same old, which is a good thing.
I'm frequently surprised at how many companies are running their apps in production without any way of knowing when things go wrong, or who are running them in production and not really having a way of knowing where things are slowing down. That's why I recommend that people use a service like AppSignal. AppSignal plugs into your application seamlessly, whether you're using Rails or Phoenix or something else, and provides you a way of knowing when things go wrong, when things are going slow, and what other problems your application may be facing so that you can fix them and provide a seamless user experience for those who are using your app. So whether you're starting a new app or working on an existing app, you should check out AppSignal and see how it can work for you. Go to appsignal.com. That's AppSignal.com. Yeah. So the episode that I'm finding is episode 333, which was back in 2017, about this time of year, 2017, back when it was still Ruby Motion. I think you had just taken it over, and
and
we're doing all the things.
We still have a Ruby Motion. Well, so DragonRuby, the naming things,
right?
It's the worst. So the company and the LLP is called DragonRuby, and then Ruby Motion is a DragonRuby product, and Game Toolkit is a DragonRuby product. It's just really annoying to say DragonRuby, Ruby Motion. So,
okay.
But yeah, so it's DragonRuby, Game Toolkit, and then DragonRuby, Ruby Motion. And hopefully some rebranding on Ruby Motion will happen. It'll potentially be called App Toolkit. But it's one of those things, it's like, all right, now I got to buy a domain and all that. Right. So it's just Ruby Motion. But Ruby Motion is still around. And then we added this additional product being Game Toolkit.
Okay, that makes sense. My son wants to be a game developer, so this may be a way that we do it. I don't know. Oh,
yeah. It's actually worked pretty well with workshops and young kids because everything's hot-loaded. So instead of going through like the fundamentals of, okay, here's how you type an if statement and all the boring stuff, you just bring up one of the sample apps I usually recommend, Flappy Dragon, and just bring it up and start tweaking the values and just see how things change. I think younger audiences, even older ones, I mean, it's just great to have that feature, but they really engage with that because they'll say, oh, what if I change the gravity from 9.2 to 15? What happens? And seeing that update live, it's just a really great feeling. So I think you'll have a good time with it.
Yeah, he's been taking programming classes at the high school, and they have a game development class. And so I think they're teaching him C# and Unity.
Yep, that's usually the standard. Don't do it. It's horrible. So horrible. But we can go into like the motivation and all that stuff in a little bit. But
I will say I downloaded that Flappy Dragon game and it ran no problem. It was really cool.
Yeah.
So kudos. I mean, it's not often you can just download something and
double click it.
That's very complicated. Double click it just works.
Yes. Yeah, and that was like one of the biggest motivators that I had was that you unzip the file and just double click the runtime and it starts up. It's zero dependency. It feels so good to be able to do that. And you're just like, wait, that's it? It's like, yeah, you just double, and it runs we have it completely cross-platform, and we made sure to make sure that it ran on Raspberry Pis, primarily for that same reason of like teaching and stuff. You get your kid a tiny like Raspberry Pi computer and it can run DragonRuby. And it's really important to us. So I'm really happy that just kind of worked for you.
Nice. So it sounds like it's kind of easy to get started, but let's just back up for the people who haven't heard from you in 4 years or are new to the Ruby community and just, haven't run across Ruby Motion or DragonRuby. You want to kind of give the I guess the elevator pitch or the 5-second, hey, what is this thing that we're talking about?
Right. I think that would really help. So DragonRuby is a custom Ruby runtime that is completely cross-platform and zero dependency. So the idea there is that you are able to get up and running using the Ruby programming language. And you can build applications, I guess. They're a little bit more boring than video games, but it lets you build cross-platform video games and deploy cross-platform, iOS, Android, web, PC, Mac, Linux, console, all the things. So it's a super lean, refined runtime runtime and machinery that allows you to use Ruby for video game development. And that's what DragonRuby is.
Awesome. So you build apps like you would think of just an app, right? With input fields and whatever it does. And you can also build video games.
Totally. Yes.
And you said it's cross-platform, so I can run it on my phone. I can run it on my computer, wherever I want.
Yep. Phone, iOS and Android, PC, Mac, Linux. You can do a web build, so WASM is target export, and
nice.
The consoles. Because I have a video game on the Nintendo Switch that uses DragonRuby. So you can deploy to consoles and it all just works.
Nice.
And you have the most important part. Yeah. Just to make
I guess the other piece is, when we were talking, my son's learning C# and Unity at school. So, I mean, that gives you like physics engines and some 3D capabilities and, stuff like that. So you can do all that in DragonRuby as well?
That's a great question. So with regards to what DragonRuby's specialization is 2D games. So if you want like the lean, mean, it just works kind of experience for 2D games, there's no competition with regards to between DragonRuby and Unity. Now, the interesting thing is that when the Oculus Quest came out, we started thinking about, well, how do we transition into this 3D world? I think like the existing desktop 3D market is kind of oversaturated. I mean, there's a lot of competition there. And personally, Unreal, they eat their own dog food. It's a phenomenal engine. It's just great. So like the 3D space, I think the contenders, specifically with Unreal, it didn't make a lot of sense for us to go into that space. But the interesting thing was that when I got my Oculus Quest, or I guess Meta Quest now, do any of y'all have a VR device or Oculus?
Yeah, we have 2 Oculuses here.
It's magical. It was so magical. I was like, oh my gosh, you know what? You know what would be awesome if we could build VR games using Ruby and have it hot loaded to the device and just kind of work. Not a AAA title. I'm just an indie dev, like one guy, but I want to build Space Invaders in VR and have the enemies come towards me. Is that something I can do? And we pulled it off. So our 3D offering ends up being skip desktop 3D completely, and we just went straight to VR. So it's still in its early phases, and we've got quite a few sample apps out there, but it brings the barrier to entry down so low where if you know how to build a 2D game with DragonRuby, you add a Z to your sprite properties or your primitive properties, and then X, Y, and Z rotation, and suddenly you have a 2D object that can be turned and manipulated in 3D space. And it's just phenomenal from that perspective. But yeah, the short answer, 2D games, no competition. VR, if you want to jump into VR without any of that intimidation, DragonRuby is the way to do it.
So Amir, how does that work? Like how do you get Ruby to run, let's say specifically for VR, right? Like if we're working on the Oculus platform, like how does that like process work? Like, is it easy? I can't imagine it is.
This is like the rest of the L, right? No, so it's complicated, but I think it's really interesting to talk about because it kind of reframes some of like the terms that developers use with regards to like comparing languages and runtimes. And so roll up your sleeves. Let's get into some of the technical stuff, I guess, right? So when I initially talked about DragonRuby, I said that it's a runtime. And so the really interesting thing there is that when people talk about a language and we say, oh, I use Ruby, we usually mean Ruby language spec 3.0 plus on the C Ruby runtime. That's kind of what we're abbreviating and saying. And so when someone says, oh, I do game development with Unity, you're using the C# 6. Crappy off incompatibility language spec. The 6.0 language spec is phenomenal. Unity butchers it. I'm gonna rag on Unity throughout this podcast. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
It's my favorite thing to pick on. But they're on the C# language spec and the Unity runtime. So, and Unity was originally based off of the Mono runtime, and then it diverged and they created their own extensions. So that's kind of the caveat when I talk about Ruby the language and then the runtime. So then now the question is like, how do you make a runtime and how does it work cross-platform? Well, that was the thing, is that when you have the language specification, the C Ruby runtime, I think it recently got WASM capabilities, but it wasn't something that supported WASM, and I imagine it'd be really difficult to get it to work on iOS and Android. I couldn't get it working on console, primarily because there's an assumption that the executing processes are PC, Mac, and Linux, right? The Nintendo Switch OS does not have the same OS infrastructure that these other operating systems have. So you have the dependency as that runtime, even though it's Ruby. So what we ended up doing was like, okay, well, how can we make this cross-platform? And our entry point was actually mRuby. So mRuby is an embedded Ruby runtime, which is phenomenal because it doesn't have any dependencies on the operating system. So with that kind of isolated Ruby implementation that can just be invoked from any C library or C executable, we started with that and then expanded around that to say, okay, now can we make a truly cross-platform file access and truly cross-platform rendering engine and truly cross-platform IO, and what does that look like? So that's where a lot of our work was. So we took mRuby as an initial starting point and then fleshed out that outer shell to make it usable across all these different environments. Now, the good thing there is that when it comes to cross-platform multimedia, there's a library out there that already does this stuff, and it's called libSDL, Simple Direct Media Layer. So our hard dependency, instead of being standard libraries across each specific OS, we take a hard dependency, libSDL, and use that facade to execute, render, and do all the things across all these different environments. So during the porting of the Nintendo Switch stuff, I hacked something together, and then Ryan C. Gordon, he's Icarus on Twitter. He's like the SDL guy. If you're playing a Steam game on Linux, chances are he's probably helped port that specific game over. So he's a pretty much a juggernaut in that industry. And during the Switch Pro, I was like, hey, this is my crazy idea. What do you think? He's never used Ruby. He's like, let's do it. So I brought him on as a partner, and he's a core maintainer and core contributor to SDL, and now he's part of DragonRuby itself. So that's kind of what. And then I said, hey, figure this out, and he figured out the details of it, and then I handled the interrupt between mRuby and libSDL. So he handled the layer from the OS to SDL, make sure all that stuff works, and I handled the layer from SDL up into Ruby. And
my brain's still going. I can write Switch games.
You can.
That's cool.
You can write Switch. You can write Nintendo, and the beauty of it is that you write it on your machine, one single code base. It will run everywhere, and
that's so cool.
That was really important to me because I, at this point, have like 6 or 7 games out there, and the upkeep is so difficult. Like, every year a new iOS device comes out, or a new Android device comes out, or a new console, and just dealing with all the vendor fragmentation, it was just I couldn't build more games because I was so busy with the upkeep. And that's when I said, okay, I need to take a pause for literally 3 years to try to solve this problem so I can continue, doing what I love and building video games. So of course, it's like, hey, I'm just gonna write the game engine. Forget it. Let's just do that. And so, as the saying goes, we do these things not because they were easy, but because we thought they were easy. And here we are. So that's how you build a runtime. Cool. That's how you build a runtime.
So video game platforms, just a sec, because you mentioned like the desktop platforms and the mobile platforms, but can you run it on like Xbox or PlayStation or any of those as well?
Totally. Yep, absolutely. You need to sign your NDAs, and you have to have like the dev kits and stuff. But once we verify it, you're ready to rock. And the reason it's so easy for me to say that, like, it's going to work. It goes back to that explanation. So our runtime is embedded, and the layer around the runtime that handles all the multimedia is libSDL. And
right,
I mean, like Valve uses this. The entire Steam client is built in libSDL, right? So that library is just it's our hard dependency that we're taking. So we basically said, okay, if we were going to do Ruby all over again, what dependency do we take on at the OS level? And our air quotes correct answer is libSDL, and that's what solved our cross-platform challenges.
That's so cool. I have so many follow-ups, but I'm going to try and focus them.
I don't. If y'all don't see me for a month.
I mean, yeah, I totally want to start like making a ton of games now, right?
So you can actually go to fiddle.dragonruby.org, and it's got a code editor and a window it's 16 by 9, but it's 160 pixels by 90 pixels.
Oh,
and
wow.
you can just type hello world. There's a hello world that loads up, and you save, and it hot loads in the environment, and it's wild. It's completely crazy that just kind of works. And there, one of the tutorials is there's like a jump tutorial, and the last one is like you fly through space, and it does like a kind of like a parallax view of flying through space, and it just all works in the browser, and
that's awesome. That's the WASM stuff that's running on?
That's the WASM stuff. Yep.
Oh, that's so cool. So what's your experience like working with mRuby? I'll admit my experience is pretty limited to like just making some LEDs blink on the Raspberry Pi.
Yeah, mRuby's, so the caveat, and this goes back to the idea of like, so what is a runtime, right? So the mRuby runtime, it doesn't have all the things that the Ruby runtime would have. Example would be, I guess, UUIDs, or like for base64 encoding, you can't run Rails on it because it doesn't have all the out of process communications that you have there. But the core standard lib is pretty freaking fleshed out, and as far as like the compiler options, there's enough configuration in there where you can turn the dial between super lightweight and I'm running on a machine that can have a bigger like memory stack and object heap and all that good stuff. So we took that initial mRuby configuration and was like, well, we know that we're not going to run on anything leaner than maybe a Raspberry Pi, so we can turn a lot of these dials up. So, and we just kind of did that. We just turned up a lot of those dials. And then for things that we did additional optimizations to like the threading model and just the whole like event loop. So DragonRuby actually has an event loop similar to Node.js. So instead of having threads that you initialize, you do an async call, and then on the reentrancy of the message pump, you poll to see if that specific action is completed. So that's like a difference, right? So what's so different about mRuby versus DragonRuby? Well, DragonRuby has a message pump and an event loop that mRuby doesn't have, right? So those are kind of some of the interesting nuances there. But we turned all those dials up, and then we did some performance tuning specifically with rendering and libSDL, and we're to a point where, like, I'll post a YouTube link to y'all, but I do a demo where I render 20,000 sprites on the screen. And it's like they fly up into the right like a Starry Night thing. And then I do the same thing in Unity. See, there I go, picking on Unity again. And Unity gets like 8 frames a second, and we're like hitting 58 frames a second. So
oh wow, it's
fast. And you'll always hear, well, Ruby is slow. And just to beat that dead horse, a language can't be slow. Yeah. A runtime can be slow, but a language is a language spec. So
have you tried JavaScript?
Have I tried JavaScript? So there is a C# implementation that is, I think it's like called sharp.js from back in the day. And that's a common thing I bring up. It's like, well, okay, so if I write this program in sharp.js, write it in .NET Core, and then write it in Mono, aren't they all C#? Aren't they all going to be fast? It's like, well, no, this other thing is going to be slower. And that's like the aha moment. So so the Unity runtime is bloated. It's got a lot of, it's heavyweight, and it had to be.
I want to jump on this Unity thing, because my brother is right now building a game in Unity, and it's not going very well. So I've been trying to get him to move. Absolutely true. And I need some like tangible reasons why he needs to move, because he's not really worried about performance. It's a really simple educational game, but and he's using the C# stuff, as we say. So how can I sell this to him as an existing Unity developer?
So I think the biggest so historically over this 3-year period, I've gotten a lot of these like questions. And initially I started with like objective stuff, like, oh, it's faster, and give all these like different reasons on the performance and everything. And it never works. So I think, so over time, what I found out was that the best thing I can say is if you're looking to get a full-time job at a studio, getting overworked and underpaid to work on someone else's dreams, learn Unity.
Ooh, sign me up.
That's the best thing to do. It's 100% true, right? If that's what you want, if you want to be in the industry, work 80 hours a week, get underpaid, and then get laid off at the end of after the release of the game, use Unity. And if you want a fighting chance of building something for yourself as a 1 to 2 person team and actually have a chance of it releasing and making even a small amount of sustainable income, you have to use DragonRuby, because that is my business model. That's how I survive, right? Is these micro teams, and I can't afford to have to deal with cross-platform issues. I don't have the capital. I can't afford to deal with, I can't throw money at a problem, money and bodies at a problem. So I have to use an engine that understands that and doesn't put me in that position. And DragonRuby is that engine. So if you're a brother, I think you said it was your brother or friend, brother.
It's my brother, yeah.
Yeah. If he wants this educational game to actually release and run from day one on everything that he wants to run it on, I mean, DragonRuby is your best bet. And then we have got our community Discord, and I'm there to help, right? I'm there to help anyone that's in the same shoes that I'm in. And I think that that drives the point home much more than the objective aspects of it.
I love that. I'm totally on board with this thinking too. Mm-hmm. I'd love to dive in more on the why not Unity, because historically, I think a lot of people are attracted to Unity primarily for their physics engine, right? That just comes built in. What is DragonRuby doing that can also like give that feature set that a lot of people do?
Yeah. So here's the plot twist, and you can try it yourself. Nobody uses the built-in physics engine. Nobody that has a real game out there uses the built-in physics engine. They just don't do it. So Celeste, hand-rolled physics engine. But basically every big game you can think of out there hand-rolled their physics engine. They did not use the built-in stuff. And what happens is you use the built-in stuff, and then you find that it doesn't work. You have clipping issues. There's non-deterministic simulation as far as taking an input and then making the collision actually work. That doesn't work. And then the complexity is there. So you've got, I want Mario to jump up and down, and that's it. So I've got a vector for the power in the X and Y direction, gravity, and drag. I don't have to set restitution, elasticity, apply all these like different meshes and materials to it to do something. So there's aspect of like this massive complexity, just trying to understand how to use the physics engine in itself. I think for 3D games, it makes total sense. Like you need to have those facilities in place, and it's probably worth the effort. For 2D games, it's just not worth it. So the built-in physics engine, you go on Twitch, find some random streamer that's doing Unity and has gotten pretty far in their game, and ask them if they use the built-in physics engine. The answer is always going to be no. It just doesn't work. So this is a little checkbox. So what does DragonRuby do? It's a silly little checkbox. It's like, check this box. We have a physics engine. It does not work, but it's there. So what DragonRuby does is that we don't have a built-in physics engine, but we have, I think, like at this point, 15, 20 sample apps that show different facets of physics. So what does ball physics look like? How do you simulate, bouncing ball? What does access the line bounding box collision look like? What does physics for a platformer look like? What does physics look like for a vertical platformer? So all those what does rope physics look like? We've got a game that simulates like ninja rope. It's called Klepto Frog, and you're a frog that steals mugs every night, and then every morning the people come back to the office and have to take the mugs back out of your little aquarium place. So, and use your tongue as a swinging mechanism. So we've got all these and Flappy Dragon is, you've got your flying physics and gravity physics there. So what I'm trying to frame it as is that you've got this game that you want to try to build, and here's a starting point for the concepts that you need to understand to build that kind of that specific type of physics experience. And then from there, it's tweaking, it's expanding, and making it feel good for what you're trying to build out. And it's worked really well for us. If you want, there's something called Chipmunk 2D, which is a C-based physics library, and so you'll need an ND license or above for using C extensions. But any physics engine out there that's written in C and C++ can be integrated into DragonRuby as a foreign function interface. So if you want to bring in Chipmunk 2D, or I think Box 2D is Java, but Chipmunk 2D is my go-to if you really want to do some crazy physics stuff. But you bring it in, expose those bindings to Ruby, and you've got your physics engine at that point. But
that's awesome.
That's how we do it. The built-in physics engine does not work, people. I promise.
How is your performance using FFI? Have you noticed any like resource bog down, especially on like Raspberry Pi as an example?
So that's the interesting thing about mRuby and cRuby is that all the core Ruby classes are foreign function interfaces, right? They're all written in C. So FFI is basically saying I'm going to implement this Ruby object in C as opposed to plain old Ruby. So the FFI is really fast because it's intrinsic to the entire language itself. And then as far as generating those bindings, we've got a CLI tool that will generate your Ruby bindings for you and expose it as a Ruby class that you can interact with. So that's one of the niceties that we added to, instead of having to manually construct your Ruby objects using the mRuby API. We provide a means where you point it to a header file and it's able to generate your Ruby bindings for you.
Hey there, this is Charles Max Wood. I'm excited because I wanted to let you know about this thing that I pulled together that I've been dying to have this for years, and I never felt like I could. And then I just realized that there's no reason why I can't. So I'm putting together a book club, and we're going to read development-focused books, career books, technical books, whatever. The first book that we're going to do is going to be Clean Architecture by Uncle Bob Martin. If you're not familiar with Clean Code or some of the other stuff that Bob has done, check that out. I've also talked to him on the Clean Coders podcast, which is on Top End Devs. But we're going to get on. He's going to show up to some of our meetings. And what I'm thinking is we'll probably have like 5 or 6 people part of the conversation along with Bob and I at the same time. And we'll just, so somebody can come on, they can ask their question, and then we'll just rotate people through. So we'll mute one person, unmute another person when it's their turn to come on and be part of the discussion. So we'll do that for like an hour and a half. And then the other part of it that I'm putting together is just kind of a meet and greet gather area on GatherTown. And so after the meetup and the call, what we'll do is we'll all go over to GatherTown, and you can just log in, walk up to a group and have a conversation. And that way we can all kind of get to know each other and make friends and get to know people across the world. One thing that I'm finding is that, the meetups are starting to come back, but a lot of people don't have the opportunity to go to a meetup. And I really want to meet you guys and talk to you. So we're going to put all that together. It'll all be part of that book club. You can go to topenddevs.com/book club to be part of it. And I'm looking forward to seeing you there. The first book club meeting will be in December, the beginning of December. We're starting the first week of December. And you'll also be part of the conversation about which book we do next. I have one in mind, but I want to see where everybody's at. So there you go.
So I'm curious what you're doing in DragonRuby, maybe specifically, that makes FFI kind of safe. Because I thought there was like kind of some thread safety issues in using FFI. Is there something you're doing special? I know you talked briefly about how you're handling those async calls. Is there anything beyond that, maybe?
I think that's the linchpin as far as the async calls, was that our eventing model, you basically had a time slice. So your simulation and your game loop runs at 60 hertz. So 60 times a second, we fire up the VM, invoke the tick, the entry point, which is tick, and you get to do whatever you want within that time slice. You can go over, but at that point, you're basically stalling your game. So once that time slice is done, it basically, air quotes, shuts down, and then the rest of the C world does its thing. So when it comes to like the thread synchronization, we know our synchronization point. It's at the beginning it's at the reentrancy of that VM loop, and that simplified a lot of things. So there's never a situation where a C struct is interacting with a Ruby object effectively at the same time. And it just kind of worked. Yeah.
I never thought of it that way, because you're right. Like game development is frame by frame. You have a very specific allotment, right? And time-based entry points. you do like it simplifies the whole system at that point.
It does.
So I mean, how much have you kind of augmented mRuby to handle that? Like, is it a lot of upkeep to deal with that kind of process?
Yeah, so the upkeep is there. So to briefly talk about some of the niceties of like the event loop is that we can aggressively GC because of that same reason. Because at the beginning of that entrancy, we can do a major GC event before we delegate to your game. So that synchronization point is really awesome. We can do a lot of cool things there. Aside from that, the upkeep. So the Ruby code base is about, I think, 12 to 13 lines of code for the runtime. And after this 3-year period, the customizations we've added on top of it are at 21,000 lines of C code on top of that. And so we've doubled the size of the runtime. Generally, we try not to touch the Ruby runtime itself. And so we can always rebase and merge and kind of pull in their changes. We made some small tweaks to to how hashes work to make them a little bit more performant. Pushing those changes upstream is a little bit trickier because it's not entirely applicable to the greater mRuby world. But for the context of what we're working on, it made sense to say we're always going to interact with the symbol, and we're always going to interact with this facet of the hash data structure or the array data structure. So we'll do a custom patch in our runtime to do that. So, but we're at the maintenance is there, and thankfully it's not a conflict of maintenance from mRuby side. It's just we've added stuff to it, and it didn't start off at 20,000 lines. It was like, oh, this is just a really small extension. This is going to be great. We can totally do this. And here we are 3 years later with double the code base. But it's one of those things where it builds up over time, and it's valuable. It just makes it's good. They're good changes.
I don't know how much longer I can wait. How do I start? Like, how do I start building my game, right? Or if I sit down with my son, right? So when he says he wants to be a video game developer, what he means is he wants to be Toby Fox. Just being absolutely clear. I don't know if you all know who he is. He made Undertale, which and it's a 2D game, right? You move your character around, right? So I'm sitting here thinking, this is the stuff he wants to make, right? He wants to make a funny, quirky story like Undertale, or what's the sequel to it? Deltarune. He wants to make those games, right? And I'm sitting here thinking this would be fun, right? It'd also be fun to I can see myself building a game where you have to go navigate office politics as a developer or something. I don't know, do an Undertale that's a developer game or something. But all these things kind of come together. But how do I start? What do I do and what do I have to have in place in order to make it work?
You got it. So you download the zip, you double click to unzip it, and then you double click DragonRuby EXE, and you're up and running.
Okay. What if I'm on a Mac?
You unzip, you go into the folder, double click, and you're up and running. Guess what Linux is like. You unzip, then you have to go into the CLI and then do chmod +X, and then you're up and running. But that's really it. So after you're up and running, there's a sample app called under genre RPG _ top down. And there are 2 sample apps that demonstrate how to do a top-down RPG with map collision, movement around the map, and if you enter a specific area, a label shows up, so it kind of shows you air quotes eventing. But I posted a link to that, and if you go to top-down starting point and look at the source code, I think you'll find it really approachable.
So I guess because I'm thinking I have to put all my assets in place and I've got to do all this stuff in order to make the game work. But effectively what you're telling me is that you've already kind of given me the framework for if I want to do a side scroll or a top to bottom scroll. I don't know. I don't know the lingo, but or a top down game, which is what we're talking about here with, navigating the map, kind of like Zelda, right? And so from there, I can start to modify the map. I can modify the interactions. I can figure out, they walk through a door. Now I got to do this. And that's all in place. So it's kind of like, I want a web app. I'm going to do Rails new, except that, it sounds like this actually gives me a little bit more because I come out with a functional framework that I don't even have to do the scaffold in order to see a page, right? Or do REST interactions.
Exactly. That, and there's pre-canned sprites in there. So we've got squares, circles, triangles, hexagons.
Right.
And the deploy template, they're under the sprites directory. They're rainbow colors, so Roy G. Biv. And if you want to render a square, it's just sprites /square/blue.png, and then you can replace the asset later. So those
or I can put my own assets in that are this character.png or whatever.
Exactly. And that's one aspect of like building games, and why Ruby is so wonderful for this world, is that you don't know what you're building yet. I don't know the structure of this. I don't know the types. I don't know what properties I'm going to have. I don't know if the HP exists on the armor, or if the armor is a container for slots that have, materia that has HP mechanisms in there. So if you use like a statically typed language, the language is asking you, tell me what this looks like right now. And I think for like maybe a checking application or banking software, that world is predefined. I could see like a transfer or transaction being something that you can predefine and have work. But in this world of like artistic medium and games, Ruby feels so good because you can start with dictionaries and arrays. You can say, I don't know what my things look like. So you create your tuples and your dictionaries. And then you start maybe say, well, maybe I can do an open struct for this property because it's kind of getting some form and function, and then evolve to a class later. And I think that's a beautiful aspect of it. So with those pre-canned sprites and these pre-canned starting points, lets you have that spark of inspiration and immediately start to experiment and see if there's something there without having to do all the stuff up front. Yeah.
So that's the other question, because you keep talking about this is so nice in Ruby. This is so nice in Ruby. And I remember way back in the day when I was trying Ruby Motion, and I might have this confused with something else, but I think it was Ruby Motion. The API was basically, I'm writing Objective-C Ruby style, right?
Right.
It was I'm going to call this exact function that has a really freaking long name, and it's going to do the iOS thing. So has that changed? I mean, it sounds like what you're telling me is that this is going to look a whole lot like mRuby and a whole lot less like Apple's Ruby.
So the mRuby, that mRuby layer provides us the polyfill to basically give us, because with Ruby Motion, if we wanted to have array.findAll, we had to extend the framework and say patch it, redirect to delegate to this, Objective-C function. So mRuby provides us the polyfill that says, okay, everything, if we don't have the native function to support this in our runtime, we can always fall back to the mRuby function. So that transition is that strategic. It was exactly for that reason. So we could position ourselves to slowly bring some of the core like I think mRuby's ISO standard is like 1.1.8. It's got ISO 1.8 standard lib. So as long as it's in there, you'll have access to it in mRuby. And then from there, we can slowly push down to the native level for whatever we feel needs that extra boost in performance. But yeah, so what your Ruby is going to look like Ruby.
So if I need an interaction from and I guess if it's cross-platform, you're not directly mapping over to Objective-C or something. But I guess, my question is then, if I need to interact with the OS, then you've got that polyfilled for desktop for whatever, right? And so it's gonna be move _left instead of move, in camel case, move object to the left
with X, with Y, with
yep. Okay.
Yep. And so other facets of it is that like file.read and write, we have our own file read write APIs. We have XML parsing built in, so you don't install Nokogiri because you can't,
right?
Because of all the external dependencies and native C extensions. So we have XML, we've got HTTP built in with the async model. Same thing with JSON.
What about databases?
Databases, no databases at this point. You can write a C extension if you want to, or bring in SQLite as your C extension.
Okay.
And expose that through FFI. But file IO is there, so you can you say file.write, and then you can write your data file itself. And that's generally, surprisingly, that's how a lot of game devs handle like game state as far as like saving. They just serialize it to JSON and then deserialize it and pull it out.
Yeah, as long as it's not too big, I would assume that'd be pretty fast.
Oh yeah. I think a dark room, I had like the ASCII map itself had 3600. It was a XY 3600 thing of grid, and it persists to just extremely fast and pulls it out. So you can have pretty big game state. If you're dealing with millions of records, then I'd probably say, okay, talk with me. Let's figure out what SQL solution we need to put in there. But yeah, we try to abstract all that out so you don't have to worry about it.
Nice.
Yes.
So if I'm developing a game in DragonRuby, what is like if I wanted to like take advantage of the next platform version, right? Like what's that upgrade process look like? Is there a waiting period? Like how long until I could take advantage of that, right?
So the ND and Pro license, which is ND gives you C extensions and Pro gives you Oculus Quest, iOS and Android. You just bump up the license tier and that's it, and you're done. So if you've got the mobile device and you've got your Apple developer account or your Android device, you download the new binary, and when you package your game, you will see the Android and iOS payloads there for you to do whatever you'd like with, and VR.
How does licensing work? Is it per developer, per year, per game, per
developer? No commissions, no royalties. Per developer, install it on however many systems you have.
And you pay once?
The standard license one time. The ND and Pro are subscription based because we have to keep updated.
That makes sense.
Every iOS and Android release, you got to deal with it. And the thing is like from my perspective, there's two aspects to it. I never want to put someone out financially. So like we've got in our bylaws or in our product page, we say, if you can't afford the license, just email me and I'll set you up. Like it's just that simple. Now, if you're gainfully employed making above six figures, you will pay for this thing, right?
Right.
It's like $7 a month for like an indie license. You're gonna pay for it, and our target price is less than a Netflix subscription. That's kind of how we frame it. And I've had people actually push back and say, "Well, can I pay when I make money?" And I go, "Well, do you have hobbies?" And they go, "Yeah, I do woodworking." How much have you spent? How much have you spent on your hand saws? And it's like, oh, I've got this like really cool like $5,000. It's like you could buy a 60-year license with $5,000. So
I think of what some people spend on keyboards and, toward DragonRuby,
Yeah.
Look at that.
I have gone broke working on keyboards. My wallet is in pain because of it. And I've never made any money off of it, but I've never said, maybe if I sell a keyboard, will I put it in there? But yeah, I think it's a phenomenal hobby to really get into, and it's so cheap. It's a wonderful medium.
I wanted to talk a little bit about all the sample apps and everything, and maybe kind of like more of the tutorial side and like getting started with DragonRuby. Because way back when I was trying to get into game development, I came across this guy that had a site called Cartoon Smart. And basically he was an animator and he worked in Flash. And so for a while he had like just sold Flash games, and you could like take all the sprites that he had and make them into a different game that you wanted. And now he's made a kind of platform, unfortunately based on Unity, where you can basically like kind of download a test app and make some tweaks to it, similar to how you can with DragonRuby. But it's much more like hand-holding, like this is kind of like a course. Here are the steps at each phase. Do you have anything like that planned, or are there other people kind of offering that kind of thing you can point people to?
Yeah. So we've got the sample apps, and we've got the documentation, which is docs.dragonruby.org. All of that is available locally also. So all the documentation's inside of the zip file. And usually in the documentation, we've got like a series of recommendations of how to approach it. We have one YouTube video that shows building Tetris from scratch. And it's really great because Ryan does it and he doesn't have Ruby experience. So he's over there like, how the hell do I do this? And he could code circles around anyone in C, but it's great watching him use Ruby. It makes me happy that even he is productive in the environment. And so we've got school.dragonruby.org, which is your like a kind of like walkthrough type of tutorial. And outside of that, I'm gonna make sure that is actually the URL. That is not the URL. It's in the docs. Let me go to the docs real quick. DragonRuby.school. See, I knew it. And so that's your like official like training video. And the approach we're taking as far as the company organization is that we're worried about the engine and making sure we're going to do that one thing well. And we leave everything else to collaborations externally. So we rely heavily on the community, the Discord server, and say, if you want XYZ to exist, then I will make sure that you have the power to make that exist. So Lori Olson, who's a long time.
I love Lori. She's awesome.
Yeah. And she was like, yeah, I want to do a training video and this stuff. And like, done. So she handles the training videos. She's in the docs, and that's taken care of. So with this idea, Valentina, this idea of the asset store, if you want to create that asset pack that does something very specific, I'm going to support you to make sure it happens, right? Because that's things that I don't have to do. It's like, please let us do the things that we do well. And then that's one of the aspects of the community too, is that there's a lot of people that are really good with Ruby in the community, and there are a lot of newcomers. So it's beautiful to see the magic again in other people's eyes, because we've used Ruby for so long, we kind of have like lost that magic. But you see someone that's, just jumping on, and they're like, this language is so amazing. And you get what's it called? You get to be that thing where you get the feeling because they're having the feeling, or you get to feel the magic too, because you're like, he's feeling the magic, so that makes me feel good, and it makes me reminiscent of that. So the community is probably one of the strongest things about DragonRuby, is that people just help each other. Mina Swan is there. We've added another one called Kifas, which means keep it fun and stupid. So build games, don't build boring line of business applications with DragonRuby. Just enjoy, experiment, have fun, help each other. So it's kind of our stopgap in how we approach a lot of that stuff.
You get to code vicariously, might be the word.
Yes, it's so much fun. Like, you don't have to worry about, do I need to create a 15-layer file structure and 50 classes to do this enterprise TM thing. It's like one file, main.rb, put all your code in there, see if it feels good, and then evolve and expand from there. But it's a really intoxicating experience, and it feels good. It feels really good.
I will say, opening up that Flappy Dragon example, it was surprising how small it was and so easy to read. So huge kudos to you there.
Yeah. I don't have time. I don't have the dev hours to build. I got to build quickly.
So my one huge follow up here is like, it would be great to have like some kind of editor, right? Or like UI, like almost Flash-esque of the, the old days. Are there any like plans for that, or are you focusing specifically on the game engine? Are you hoping that kind of the community evolves this kind of overall environment?
Yeah. So here's the pro tip: you will outgrow any editor that's baked into a game engine. So this is that same Twitch thing. You go to Twitch and watch people use the scene editor in Unity, and then while they're coming, like, ask them, why didn't you put that one thing in the scene editor, and why are you doing it programmatically now? And they're like, oh, because the scene editor doesn't allow for this dynamic, emitter to exist, and it's too hard to get the node hierarchy, so I have to do that part programmatically. And so you outgrow whatever editor that ships with your game engine as the IDE. So what we do instead is we have a heads up display. So if you bring up the Flappy Dragon game and press tilde, it brings down the Quake console. It brings down a Quake console, and you can invoke Ruby right there inside of.
Wow, that is so cool. I have it open now. That's awesome.
And type 1+2, and it will say 3. It's the greatest thing. And so you have introspection into your entire game state from that console. And on top of that, you can invoke any function. So you're like, oh, I need to spawn an enemy over here. Well, you just type it in and spawn the enemy. And the thing is that the console itself is written in DragonRuby, and it's open source under MIT license. So you can extend your console to be
nice.
exactly what you want it to be. And the thing is that because it uses all the same concepts that are in the game engine, you're not shifting, you're not mentally shifting. Like the Unity scene editor, you have to now go into the IDE extension world, but that's not the case for us. So you've got that entry point with the heads-up display to quickly put functions in and do all that cool stuff. And then you've got the source code as a reference implementation. And then on top of that, we've got sample apps that show you how to create stage editors. So you go into God mode, and it changes the IDE to where you can put your collision maps and all that good stuff in there. And then that persists directly immediately to disk live, and you keep playing your game. So we try to position you to never, as your game gets more complex, we don't want you to go slower, because when you go slower, then you reach that point of unsustainability. And we want your engine or your game to grow with the IDE tools themselves. And historically, you always see some successful platformer do all these cool things, and then they add the stage editor after the fact. And it's like, why did you do that? Why is the stage editor coming at the end as opposed to hand in hand with the creation of your game? And that's kind of how we position things.
So I've got a quick question, and this may be stupid, but are you able to modify the game as you're playing it on like a regular device?
Yes.
Like if I allow, yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. I just say that because there are so many apps, right? Like I've seen a whole new set of games come out recently where they're like very like hacker-esque, they call them, right? That allow you to like kind of code in the game, like, you know, open up the character walks up to a computer, opens up a console, and they like can have like they could try and do stuff like a regular terminal, right?
Yeah,
that's so cool. Like I could totally imagine a game where you can make the game by playing the game.
Yeah, so one of the community members actually made an editor using the editor that they were building. So they got it to a point where it's functional, where they could type and move arrow keys around. And then they loaded the source code for the editor and started editing it with it was, we've got shaking of heads, but it was
that is so funny.
But you can disable the console, right? When you release the game?
Well, you can if you want. But as an indie, your lifeblood is people being able to mod your game. That is your lifeblood.
Yeah. Right? That is so true.
Quake 3 has a console, right? Borderlands has a console. Into the Breach on the Nintendo Switch exposes a console, right? So this heads-up display, this console is let them hack, let them explore.
I guess I don't care if they quote unquote cheat. Yeah, who cares?
It's their game. Who cares? Yep. And it's a beautiful thing. And that's how you build that community around your game and give it that longevity, because people will, they'll just create mods and you just say, here, do it, explore, grow, make fun things.
That's awesome.
Make stupid things. Yeah. It's a different mindset, because I originally thought that too. It's like, oh, you can disable it if you want, but I'd recommend don't do it. Just put the thing out there and let other people enjoy, that thing that you built. It's a good feeling.
So I noticed on the DragonRuby site, you have this Discord server, which I actually, when I went in to try these games out, joined, and it's very active. It's great. Like, where do you suggest people go for like tutorials, like diving in outside of the Discord? Is there like other sites they should track to follow? Like,
I was just about to ask the same question. My version of this, is there a book? Because I'm old, I'm going grey. I like to have a nap in the afternoons. Is there a book? I remember there was a Ruby Motion book which I bought, the Clay Allsop book. Is there a DragonRuby book for us old timers?
There isn't a book because you haven't written it yet. So there's something called there's a Pico 8. Have you heard of that fantasy console? So there's something called a Pico Zine, and it did phenomenally well. So if you type in like Pico Zine, and it's this like digital book that someone wrote about Pico 8, and the format, it alludes to like a wise, poignant. I can never say that word.
Poignant.
Wise guide. Yeah, poignant. Yeah. There we go. I always try to pronounce the G. Wise, poignant guide to Ruby. But the Pico Zine has this like retro aspect where you get those coding magazines and you take them and you try to you write the code themselves. But I would love for someone to create a DragonRuby zine and then promote that, elevate you, so you've got some new stuff coming to you and help inspire other people. But
this is how I learned to code in the 80s, was the typing in games and then modding them. So this is very close to my heart. I'm not sure I can.
Yeah. And as far as like the docs, you've got docs.dragonruby.org for the sample apps. What I usually recommend is just do the sample apps in order, because they're ordered by easiest to most complex. So if you like just reading API docs, they're available there. You've got the heads up display to do whatever class methods, and you've got all that introspection built in, or you can go through the sample apps and kind of one-on-one do that, or dragonruby.school.
So what is the best game? What is the best game? I don't mean your favorite. I mean the best.
The best DragonRuby game?
Best DragonRuby game. What's the best one?
And I can't say any of my own, right?
Well, no, you can. I mean, I know the Dark Room seems to be very popular.
It's like, wow. I can't say my own. As far as most successful games, I have the most successful games on DragonRuby. I'm probably the most successful DragonRuby game developer in the entire world because I'm probably the only one. But aside from that, there's a lot of, on the website dragonruby.org, if you go to the showcase, there's a lot of games on there that are made with DragonRuby that are available on itch. And you're putting me on the spot because I know the game, then I know like the playing of the game, and I can't remember the name of it, but it was actually built for a game jam. So someone put it together for the boss battle game jam, and that game is pretty fantastic. And it was some of the community members that put that together. But I'll share the link to that specific game itself. But the art was good, the controls were beautiful, its music is great. It's just a really great game.
Cool. So what is itch.io? I just have to ask.
So itch.io is kind of your, how you do mixtapes or like SoundCloud. It's kind of like your mixtape SoundCloud for video games. So you makes it trivial to upload your games on there. You can monetize them. We actually sell the standard license on itch itself to just be part of that community and to get the organic visibility there. But it's kind of like Steam requires you to do a lot of things to get a single game out there. Itch removes all that. It's like, put the game out, sell it.
Okay.
Give us a cut if you want. You can set like how much money you give back to them, and it's a really great model. But yeah, it's kind of like Steam, but for that indie world.
Was it Decaf Dungeon?
Is it? I don't think it's Decaf Dungeon, but that does sound like a game that someone would make with DragonRuby. But there's so many games. There's so many games on there. But Duelist. That was it. That's the name of the game. So Duelist came out of a boss battle game jam, and basically the idea of the game jam is that you create a boss and you have to beat that boss. And they just did a phenomenal job with it. For that game jam, I created Broadsword of Justice. So that's another playable, ridiculous title that you can play. But yeah, that would be my game pick.
Very cool. Have you ever wished that you had a group of people that were just as passionate about writing code as you are? I know I did. I did that for most of my career. I'd go to the meetups. I'd try and create other opportunities. And it was just really hard, right? The meetups, I got some of that, but they were only like once or twice a month. And it was just really hard to find that group of people that I connected with and really wanted to, talk about code a lot, right? I mean, I love writing code. I think it's the best. And so I've decided to create this community and create it a worldwide community that we can all jump in and do it. So we're going to have 2 workshops every week. One of those or 2 of those every month are going to be Q&A calls, right? Where you can get on, you can ask me or me and another expert questions. The rest of them are going to be focused on different aspects of career or programming or things like that, right? So it'll go anywhere from like deployments and containers all the way up to managing your 401k and negotiating your benefits package. We'll cover all of it, okay? And then we're also going to have meetups every month for your particular technology area. So we have shows about JavaScript, React, Angular, Vue, and so on. We're going to have meetups for all of those things. I'm going to revive the freelancer show. We'll have one about that, right? So you can get started freelancing or continue freelancing if that's where you're at. And I'm working on finding authors who can actually do weekly video tutorials on something for 10 minutes that's related to those technology areas so that you can stay current and keep growing. So if you're interested, go to topenddevs.com/sign up and you can get in right now for $39. When we're done, that price is going to go up to $75. And the $39 price gets you access to 2 calls per week. The full price at $150, which is going to be $75 over the next few weeks, that price is going to get you access to all of the calls and all of the tutorials and everything else that we put out from Top End Devs, along with member pricing for our remote conferences that are coming up next year. So go check it out, topenddevs.com/sign up. All right. Well, yeah, let's get to picks because, I have other things to do today. Yeah. Valentino, what are your picks?
I just got a new Apple Watch, the Ultra, and I'm just loving it. I love my old watch didn't have an always on display. And so so annoying to just look down and then have to raise your arm which I know some of the semi-newer ones already had this, but it's just so great to just be able to look down and like know what direction I'm facing. It's pretty slick.
Raising your arm, that's rough.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Didn't the 90s have always on watches? I vaguely remember.
I mean, I don't know. Mine were always those like Casio ones that were digital. So like if the sun hit it the wrong way, you had to raise it up anyway. So
yeah.
So I guess like in a way I have the same watch. I had the same watch.
Nice.
That's it for me.
Okay, Luke, what are your picks?
I was going to pick UTM for Mac last week. I got one of the new ARM-based Mac laptops, and I couldn't get any of my stuff to run until I installed UTM, stands for Universal Turing Machine. It's completely changed the way I use the machine. So UTM's free. It's based on the QEMU backend. And given what we've been talking about, I would like to pick a couple of things from a YouTube channel called Void Star Labs, which is just amazing for hardware hacking. He's got a video on his new hackable mechanical keyboard called the MyRage 3, and another video on his head-mounted display. Speaking of a HUD, this is a real life head-mounted display based on an Epson pair of kind of smart video glasses. So those are my picks for this week.
Awesome. I'm going to throw out a few picks. Now, I've been traveling, so I haven't been playing a whole bunch of board games. So I think I'm just going to re-pick one that my wife and I played last night. We do a date every week, and we decided to just play board games for our date this week. So we played King of Tokyo. If you've played that, it's pretty simple. I'll admit I destroyed her both times we played it. And then we played Legendary, Marvel Legendary. So just to kind of give a little bit of background on these games, King of Tokyo is a dice game. You roll the dice. If you attack the person, if you hit the person in Tokyo, they can leave Tokyo and you go into Tokyo. You can't heal when you're in Tokyo. You can get cards to give you special abilities. And anyway, it's a ton of fun. Let me pull up Board Game Geek real quick so I can tell you the weight on that one. It's a game that I can play with my kids, so it's not that involved. There is a sequel to it, this King of New York, and I didn't like it as much. Okay, King of Tokyo has a weight of 1.49. It says it's 30 minutes playing time. Yeah, the first game, I beat her in like 10 minutes. And it was just, sometimes it's just the way it goes with your rolls and the way you get things going. But yeah, so Marvel Legendary it's a card game, and it comes with a game board so you can place the cards on it where it goes. It's a deck building game though, and we have a whole bunch of expansions for it. It's a lot of fun too. Its weight on Board Game Geek is 2.43, and yeah, so I actually wrote an app in React Native that randomly chooses cards from the expansions that you select. So, and then it says, here's the mastermind you're fighting. Here's the scheme you're trying to overcome. You tell it how many players, you tell it which expansions you want to pull heroes from and masterminds from. And then, yeah, it does it. What we found, because we used to like turn them all on, right? And so you get like this weird mix of heroes. What we found is that the different expansions are made to work together in a lot of ways. And so kind of the magic mix is about 2 expansions, because you get 5 heroes or 6 heroes, depending on how many people are playing. But it's a lot of fun. Some of the masterminds are really freaking hard and some of them aren't, but you kind of get a feel for how that works. And it's a fun game. So I'm going to pick those. And then I'm starting a new podcast about careers. It's actually called Command Your Coding Career. And the reason is because I opened up a while back an opportunity for people to come to me for coaching, where I would just help them with whatever. I mean, technical stuff, career stuff. And I had people coming to me over and over again, basically saying, how do I get to the next stage of my career, right? Whether they're juniors and they're trying to become seniors, or I had a number of seniors who were basically coming to me and saying, I want to start podcasting because the next stage of my career seems to be helping people or making a difference this way, that way, or the other way. A few people wanted to start a podcast or something else so that they could sell courses and stuff like that, which is a place I'm going to now. And so I've started this podcast, and I'm just going to answer a lot of the questions that I've been getting on these calls, right? So it's, hey, I'm struggling with this at work, and so I'll just talk through it. I'll probably tell a few stories from my past, my background. But one thing that came out of it was that I'm also putting together like freebies and helps for people. And so by the time this goes out, you'll be able to get this. I was working on it right before the show, and I should have it up here within an hour or so. But if you go to topenddevs.com/resume, I'm starting off with resume stuff because I've had a lot of people I'm not getting interviews. And then I look at the resume and I'm like, well, your resume isn't formatted in a way that helps the employer know that they want you. So you can get my resume, and I think it actually has my email address on it. I took my cell phone number off it, sorry. But you can get it at topenddevs.com/resume, and you just enter your email address and then you'll get a copy of it. It's pretty straightforward how that all works. But what I'm hoping to do is, then I can help people with cover letters, or maybe I can help people I keep going to interviews and it's not working right. And so maybe I'll put together some videos of mock interviews or things like that, right? And so I really do want to help people through this. I've also been working a contract, and I'm looking for ways to kind of reduce my dependency on one source. And so there are going to be paid options for some stuff, but I'm going to give a ton of crap away for free because I feel like there's a lot of people out there that need help, and I don't necessarily want you to have to pay to get what you need, but I also have to make a living. And so however I wind up splitting the difference is kind of the way that'll go. But yeah, for now, if you want the resume, go to topenddevs.com/resume. And then the last thing I'm going to throw out there is Rails Remote Conference. Putting that together, it's going to be in February. So if you want to submit a talk, submit a talk. If you want to buy a ticket, you can buy a ticket. And I'm really looking forward to some of the interactions there. I'm pretty heavily committed to not just doing like a series of videos. What I want kind of a place where people can go and interact. So I've been looking at a couple of platforms that effectively let you walk around the expo floor / interaction area. And if you get close to a group of people talking, you can join it and join in, put together some birds of a feather. I mean, that for me is the magic of going to a conference. And so if I can replicate some of that in the meantime, that's something that I want to do. I mean, I have other plans, but I think that's kind of the next big lift for what we're doing is, putting that out and helping folks out. And then, that's pretty much all of my picks. Amir, what are your picks?
All right. So my picks are actually all book related. So they're all books that I've listened to, just eat up Audible all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So first one is Project Hail Mary. And
that was so good.
Sci-fi is so good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
And it's a great read. The Martian subpick is by the same guy that did The Martian. Another great book is We Are Legion, We Are Bob. And it's a 4 book series. And it's about a software dev who sells his company and then signs up to be cryogenically frozen in the event of death so that he can be brought back and live for immortally. And signs up, immediately gets hit by a car and killed, and wakes up 150 years later to be commissioned as a von Neumann probe that goes into space and expands out.
Oh, interesting.
Hilarious. It's a funny book. It's ridiculous, and it's got a kind of like a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy vibe in some places, just the humor in there. And so that's a good book. And then and it's 4 books series. And then the final pick that I have is it's a 3 book series called The Broken Earth. So the first book in that series is called The Fifth Season, and it's more of a fantasy book, and it kind of explores like this post-apocalyptic world where like the entire Earth has been brought back into kind of like Pangaea, the Pangea continent,
mm-hmm.
and kind of talks about, I don't want to give any spoilers, but it talks about what went down and how they're going to fix it. But the Earth's in a really bad place, and there's this like the 5th season is this season that occasionally comes where there's a ton of like volcanic eruptions, and it covers the cloud and soot, and then people have to like survive with store caches, and everything's in disarray. And so it's a 3 book series that goes into the exploration of how all that gets fixed. It's a very sad book. It's like a very like bittersweet, serious book. But those are my 3 book picks.
Awesome. Yeah, I really loved Hail Mary. I didn't pick it up for a long time because I listened to The Martian. I really enjoyed it, and then I picked up Artemis, and I didn't like that book at all. I
did not like Artemis either. It was okay, but yeah.
But I was looking for a sci-fi book, and I was like, I'll give it a shot, and I really enjoyed it. So
We Are Legion. We Are Legion. We Are Bob. You will absolutely love it.
I'll have to check it out. All right, cool. If people want to connect with you online, or if you have any other last minute kind of here's where I kind of live online.
I'm on Twitter. You can find me on the Discord server for DragonRuby, discord.dragonruby.org, and email ar@amirrajan.net. So
all right,
all things are open.
Sounds good. All right, well, thanks for coming. This was awesome. I seriously, I'm just like, I have stuff I got to work on, but I might just not sleep so I can write games.
Just play. I mean, just open it up, double click, and try something, and just get that magic back. Feel happy again, right? No more no more enterprise coding. I'm not allowing you to do that after hours anymore.
Okay. All right.
You're like, done.
Yeah. Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.